Right, so get ready, because today we're going deep into a case. It's fascinating, really disturbing true crime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Karl Denke, he's called the Forgotten Cannibal.
Wow.
And we're working with a true crime podcast episode, like, as our source material. And
Okay.
honestly, it's one of those stories that, really stuck with me. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is...
Yeah, I can see why it really does raise some questions, especially when you compare it to some of the bigger cases, like Fritz Herrmann, the Vampire of Hanover, you
Right?
know?
Like, why is Denker so forgotten when
Right.
what he did was arguably even worse and involved way more people? It's
Huh.
wild.
Well, let's start in Germany, December 1924.
Okay.
The country's still, recovering from World War I and
Yeah.
in the middle of a terrible recession.
Yeah.
People are desperate. They're looking for any glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
So when they finally convict Fritz Herrmann for those brutal murders, there's this feeling of relief. Like, okay, a monster's been vanquished.
Oh.
But, when one door closes, another opens.
Oh, boy.
About 600 kilometers away, in this quiet little town called Musterberg, something seemingly totally unrelated starts to happen.
Oh, no.
This is going to become its own nightmare.
Oh, gosh.
So there's this guy, Vincent Olivier, a stonemason who'd fallen on hard times. He ends up having to beg just for scraps.
Wow.
He gets arrested for supposedly attacking this well-respected older man, a guy everyone called Father Denke.
Father Denke. I mean, even the name sounds innocent,
Right.
Like, wasn't he known as the Rhubarb King?
Yes.
The guy with that reputation for being super generous, always sharing whatever he had with the less fortunate.
Exactly. He was the kind of person you'd never suspect.
Yeah.
So of anything sinister. And this is what makes the next part so crazy. While Denke is in custody, he kills himself. Totally unexpected.
Oh, my gosh.
And then when they do the routine inventory of his apartment, that's when things get really, really terrifying.
Oh, okay, so hold on. So they go into Denke's apartment expecting to find, what, like the humble belongings of this kind old man, and instead they walk into a scene from a horror film.
Pretty much.
Oh, my God.
Just the inventory list is chilling, okay?
Oh, God.
A bucket full of human flesh, carefully preserved in salt. A barrel overflowing with human bones. A tin box packed with dozens and dozens of human teeth.
I can't even imagine what those officers must have felt walking into that room.
Yeah.
The smell, the sight, it must have been just overwhelming.
It gets even worse.
What?
They find suspenders made from human skin, bread baskets woven with human flesh.
Oh, my God. And this is where it gets really, really creepy.
Right.
Because Denke sold food, right, at the local market.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, did people unknowingly eat human meat from the Rhubarb King?
It's a disturbing thought.
So disturbing. And his neighbors had noticed, like, some weird things about him before, right?
Yeah.
Like late-night trips into the woods, strange deliveries, weird smells coming from his apartment. But they just dismissed it all as, like, harmless eccentricities.
He was just a harmless old man.
Yeah.
No one suspected anything really bad. Which brings us back to Vincent Olivier, the beggar who was accused of attacking him.
Wait, so Olivier was telling the truth the whole time?
He was. Denke wasn't the victim, he was the predator. He had lured Olivier to his apartment to make him the next victim.
This is insane.
Yeah.
So Olivier, like, narrowly escaped becoming another one of Denker's victims.
It's a chilling reminder that evil often looks normal.
Right.
It hides in plain sight, disguised as kindness.
Oh, my God. Okay, and then it gets even more disturbing, right? Because during the investigation, they found something else, right? Like in Denker's stuff.
They did. They found a list.
Oh, no.
Meticulously kept, detailing his victims. Each entry is just cold-blooded cruelty.
31 victims.
31 victims.
Over 21 years.
Over 21 years.
Oh.
And it wasn't just names. He had their slaughter weights, the weight after he'd, drained their blood, taken out their organs, dismembered them.
It's bone-chilling.
It is. And, there are stories about Denker's childhood suggesting it was troubled. There are accounts that he was fascinated with cannibalism. It might have started with an obsession with Robinson Crusoe.
It makes you wonder, was it just a morbid childhood curiosity that turned into something way darker?
Yeah.
Like, where's the line between that and actually doing these horrific things? I mean, this is where it starts to feel really unsettling.
It is unsettling because Denker's case doesn't just show us this dark side of humanity. It also reveals a shocking miscarriage of justice.
Wait, what do you mean?
Let's go back to 1909.
Okay.
Young woman, Emma Sander, brutally murdered in Neuhof, a town near Misterberg. Immediately, suspicion falls on this guy, Edward Troutman, a butcher. He'd proposed to Sander, but he was known to have, like, a violent temper.
So they just pinned it on him because of his reputation.
Yeah.
The evidence was mostly circumstantial. His temper, a leather coat that looked like one Sander owned, a smell of burning leather from his house after she vanished.
Oh, gosh.
He always said he was innocent,
Yeah,
but nobody believed him.
and they convicted him.
Convicted?
Oh, my
And
God.
sentenced to 12 years for a crime he didn't commit.
Wow. This is where my stomach drops. So you're saying Denke was actually responsible for Sanders' murder?
It seems so. Emma Sander's name is on his list. Her death is right when she disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And remember that weird detail about the missing skin on Sanders' leg, that long strip that was gone?
Yeah, it was so strange they never figured out what happened to it.
That's why Sanders' slaughter weight isn't on Denke's list. He didn't eat her flesh, he used her skin. Probably for those awful suspenders.
So he was literally wearing a piece of his victim. This is just, I don't even have words. It's beyond horrifying.
It is horrifying to think that not only was Denke doing all this, but an innocent man went to prison.
This is heavy stuff. We need a minute to process all of this. But when we come back, I want to go deeper. How did Denke go undetected for so long? And why has his story been forgotten when others, like Harmon, are so infamous? We'll dig into all of that and more in a bit. It's just crazy to think that Karl Denke, this forgotten cannibal, went undetected for over 2 decades. Like, how did he manage to fly under the radar for so long?
You know, I think it really speaks to how insidious his crimes were. Denke was like a master of deception in a way, unlike Harmon, who was out there in the shadows.
Yeah.
Denke was the quiet, unassuming neighbor, the harmless old man. He just blended right in.
It's true. So while Harmon's crimes were shocking, almost like ripped from the headlines, Denke's were more of a slow burn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
Like a creeping poison.
Oh, right.
The wolf in sheep's clothing, hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. And don't forget, this is Germany right after World War I. People are just trying to rebuild their lives. They're dealing with economic hardship, social unrest. They want answers. They want someone to blame. And Harmon, with his brutality, his almost theatrical crimes, he just fit the bill perfectly. He became the monster in their eyes.
Yeah, it's like he became the face of evil at a time when people were just desperate for an explanation, for someone to point to and say, there's the monster.
Exactly. But Denke, he was the quiet, helpful old man. He sold food at the market, offered a kind word. He didn't fit that mold of the monster they were looking for. So in a way, all the chaos, the uncertainty of that time, it allowed him to become invisible, to blend in and just continue doing these awful things without anyone noticing.
It's chilling. Almost like he was a ghost, slipping through the cracks of society. Makes you think how many other forgotten cannibals are out there?
Right?
How many other monsters are hiding in plain sight, masked by, like, normalcy and good deeds?
Chilling thought, isn't it? And it brings us back to that main question, you know, the whole reason we're doing this deep dive. Why is Karl Denke so forgotten?
Yeah.
Why has his story been overshadowed by others, even those whose crimes were maybe even less horrific?
I know. I've been thinking about that, too. Is it because his story is just too disturbing, like too close to home? Maybe as a society, we choose to forget these kinds of horrors because they make us confront some really uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
I think there's definitely something to that. Denke's case, it just shatters that illusion, right? That evil is easy to spot, that it comes with these big, obvious signs.
Right.
He makes us face the fact that darkness can be anywhere, even in the hearts of people who seem harmless.
So we can't just rely on appearances or stereotypes to judge who's good or evil. We need to think more critically, especially when it comes to justice and crime.
Absolutely. And that's why cases like Denke's are so important to remember, not just to learn about the awful things he did, but to understand how he got away with it for so long, how he took advantage of, like, societal blind spots and the trust of the people around him.
Yeah, because by understanding the past, recognizing those patterns, those warning signs, maybe we can prevent these kinds of things from happening again.
Exactly. We can't afford to forget the forgotten cannibals of the world. Their stories, as disturbing as they are, they teach us about the nature of evil, how our systems can fail, and how important it is to always be vigilant.
It's heavy stuff, but it's necessary. And that's why we're here, doing the deep dive. We dig deeper beyond the headlines and the hype to get to the truth, the stuff that often gets buried or ignored.
Because sometimes those uncomfortable truths are the ones that we need to hear the most.
Okay, so as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Think about it. If Denker was able to operate undetected for so long, preying on people and keeping up this front of normalcy, what does that say about how well we can really know the people around us?
It really makes you think, huh, it goes beyond this one case. It's about human nature itself. And as we go even deeper into Denker's story, we'll keep unpacking those implications and explore the lessons we can learn from this dark chapter of history.
You know, we've been talking about Karl Denker, the forgotten cannibal, and how his case really makes you wonder, can you ever truly know someone?
Yeah, it's like you can't judge a book by its cover, but like on a whole other level,
Right. And it's horrifying. It makes you think, what role did society play in letting someone like Denker operate for so long?
Mm.
Was it just him blending in, or was it something else? Was it the times, maybe the whole social and cultural scene that made people more vulnerable to his deception?
Well, think about it. This was Germany after World War One.
Yeah.
People were disillusioned, desperate to get back to normal. They craved security, order.
So in a weird way, maybe Denker gave them a twisted kind of comfort.
It's possible.
Like he represented that return to the familiar, to what seems safe and predictable. He was the kindly old man, the rhubarb king,
Right.
like a figure from a simpler time.
Exactly. The opposite of all the chaos and uncertainty that had been gripping the nation. And maybe people were just more willing to overlook his weirdness, those red flags, because they wanted that sense of normalcy so badly, even if it was fake.
It's almost like they had to believe in his goodness, in the illusion he'd created, because the alternative was just too awful to think about.
Right. The truth was too terrifying.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how what we see, how much we need to believe in something, can blind us to reality. It shows us how important critical thinking is, questioning what we think is true, even when it comes to people we think we know.
It's true. It all comes back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Denker and Harmon were both monsters,
Yeah.
but in very different ways. Harmon was a predator, lurking in the shadows. He made people afraid, disgusted.
Yeah.
But Denker, he was different. He was the wolf in sheep's clothing, the harmless neighbor who could get past your guard because he didn't look like a monster,
Yeah. Yeah.
which in a way makes him even more terrifying, don't you think?
I think so. He makes us question who we can trust, who is capable of evil. He makes us face this disturbing truth. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it comes with gifts, kind words, a normal face.
It's true. So, as we finish our deep dive into the world of Karl Denker, the forgotten cannibal, I want to leave you with this. His story reminds us that we need to be careful. Always question what we think we know, and never underestimate how deceptive, how evil people can be.
And maybe by remembering Denker, by facing the hard truths his case shows us, we can get better at spotting those subtle signs of danger, those wolves in sheep's clothing, and hopefully work towards a future where these kinds of horrors don't happen as much.
Well, that's it for this deep dive. It was a heavy one, but as always, thanks for listening. Stay curious and stay safe out there.